what in the actual hell is happening in Cleveland right now? While the rest of the NFL is moving at lightning speed, hiring coaches and building their rosters for next season, the Cleveland Browns are out here making grown men write essays like they're applying for college admission. Yeah, you heard that right. Essays. Personality tests, homework assignments. This isn't a job interview, this is the damn stats all over again. And the football world is absolutely losing its mind over the bizarre circus that has become the Browns' head coaching search. But here's where it gets really interesting, folks. While all this academic madness is going down in the front office, there's a young quarterback sitting in Cleveland right now whose entire future is being held hostage by this dysfunctional process. His name? Shedeur Sanders. The rookie sensation who was supposed to be the savior of this franchise is now caught in the crossfire of what might be the most chaotic coaching search in NFL history. And trust me, by the time we get through all the jaw-dropping details of what's really going on behind closed doors in Cleveland, you're going to understand why Shedeur's people are reportedly getting very, very nervous about his spot on that roster. Let me paint you a picture of just how absolutely bonkers this situation has become. It's been nearly a month since the Browns fired Kevin Stefanski, their former head coach, who, by the way, already landed on his feet in Atlanta making a cool $1.2 million every single month. Let that sink in for a second. The man got fired, immediately got hired somewhere else, and is now laughing all the way to the bank while Cleveland is still playing 20 questions with coaching candidates like they're on some kind of twisted reality show. Meanwhile, the Browns rookie class, including Shedeur Sanders, is sitting there in limbo, watching this absolute clown show unfold, and wondering what the hell kind of organization they've gotten themselves into. Now, don't get me wrong, Shedeur has shown flashes of brilliance. The kid can ball. Most of the rookie class outside of Dylan Gabriel has looked pretty decent moving forward. But here's the problem that nobody's really talking about. How is a young quarterback supposed to develop and reach his full potential when the organization can't even figure out who's going to be coaching him? The NFL insiders are now reporting details that sound like they came straight out of a satirical article, but I promise you this is 100% real. According to multiple sources, the Browns are putting coaching candidates through an interview process that would make most corporate CEOs say, yeah, that's a bit much. We're talking about personality tests, multi-part essays, questionnaires that probably have more pages than a doctoral thesis, and homework assignments between the first and second rounds of interviews. Homework. These are accomplished coaches we're talking about, men who have spent decades in professional football, who have won games at the highest level, who have developed some of the best players in the league, and Cleveland is making them do homework like they're high school sophomores. And it's not just any homework either. This is the Cleveland Browns we're talking about, a data-driven operation that has built out a massive analytics department that apparently has more say in personnel decisions than coaches with actual football experience. The whole process is designed to favor a very specific type of candidate. As one insider put it, they're looking for very smart people who, in a lot of cases, just happen to be tall, thin guys who came from Ivy League schools. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being smart or going to an Ivy League school, but last time I checked, football games aren't won on paper. They're won on the field, with real players, real plays, and real coaching instinct that sometimes can't be quantified by a bunch of number crunchers sitting in an office. So what does all this mean for Shedeur Sanders? Everything. Absolutely everything. Think about it from his perspective for just a moment. He's a rookie quarterback trying to establish himself in the most competitive professional sports league in the world. His development is critical right now. He needs stability, he needs a coaching staff that believes in him, he needs an offensive system that plays to his strengths, and he needs all of this yesterday. Instead, what does he have? Uncertainty, chaos, a front office that's more concerned with collecting data points and personality profiles than actually putting together a winning football team. The disturbing information that's coming out of Cleveland right now isn't just about the coaching search process itself. It's about what this process reveals about the organization's priorities and decision-making philosophy. When you have one of the brightest young talents at the most important position in football and you're dicking around for a month making coaches write essays, that tells everyone in the league exactly where your priorities lie. And spoiler alert, it's not with player development. Let's break down the candidates they're looking at and what each one might mean for Shedeur's future in Cleveland. First up, there's Grant Udinski, who just turned 30 years old and is in his first year as an offensive coordinator with the Jaguars. The Browns are apparently very intrigued by him because he fits their profile perfectly. He's young, he's considered brilliant by the analytics crowd, and presumably, he aced whatever ridiculous homework assignments they threw at him. But here's the question nobody in Cleveland seems to be asking. Is a first-year offensive coordinator with zero head coaching experience really the right guy to develop a franchise quarterback? Then there's Nathan Skillhouse, the passing game coordinator from the Rams, who's part of the Sean McVay coaching tree. Now, this is interesting because at least he's coming from an organization that knows how to develop quarterbacks and run a modern NFL offense. The Rams have been so adamant about waiting for Skillhouse that they're willing to delay their entire hiring process until after the NFC Championship game. If the Rams win, they can't even officially hire him until after the Super Bowl. That's how much they reportedly like this guy. But again, he's never been a coordinator at the NFL level. He's worked at the college level. He's been a position coach. But asking him to be a head coach and oversee Shedeur's development is a massive leap of faith. Here's where it gets even crazier. The Browns haven't even fulfilled the Rooney Rule yet. For those who don't know, the Rooney Rule requires teams to interview minority candidates for head coaching positions. Every other team with an opening has already done this. The Bills, who have had their position open for a fraction of the time that Cleveland has, are already Rooney Rule compliant and are way ahead in their search. But not Cleveland. Oh no, Cleveland is too busy making people write essays about why they want to be the head coach, as if Google Me isn't a perfectly valid response when you've been coaching in the NFL for 20 years. Mike McDaniel, the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, was apparently willing to interview with Cleveland initially. That interview would have fulfilled the Rooney Rule requirement. But after his initial Zoom call with the Browns, McDaniel decided he didn't want to follow through. Think about that. A successful NFL head coach got one taste of Cleveland's process and said, "Nah, I'm good." That should tell you everything you need to know about how this search is being perceived around the league. Multiple candidates have now pulled their names out of consideration for the Browns' job. These are qualified coaches who could help turn around a struggling franchise and develop young talent like Shedeur Sanders. And they're running away from Cleveland like the building is on fire. And honestly, can you blame them? Who wants to work for an organization where you have to jump through more hoops than a circus performer just to get an interview, and then once you get the job, you have to spend all your time in meetings with analytics people instead of, actually coaching football? The word dysfunctional keeps getting thrown around when people talk about the Browns front office, and owner Jimmy Haslam apparently doesn't like that characterization. But here's the thing. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and makes coaching candidates write multi-part essays like a duck, it's probably a dysfunctional duck. The facts speak for themselves. It's the Friday before championship weekend. The Browns' job has been open since the first Monday of the coaching cycle. They're still not Rooney Rule compliant, and they're the only team that hasn't conducted a single qualifying interview according to the rules. Now let's talk about what this means for Shedeur Sanders and the 2026 roster spot that's supposedly being discussed in Cleveland. Sources close to the situation are reporting that there have been internal conversations about Shedeur's future with the team, and not all of them have been positive. Some people in the building apparently think that if they hire the wrong coach, someone who doesn't fit with Shedeur's skill set, or who wants to bring in his own quarterback, the young signal caller could find himself in a very uncomfortable position. We're talking about potentially being benched, being traded, or worst of all, being stuck in a system that doesn't utilize his talents and watching his career stall before it even really gets started. This is the nightmare scenario for any young quarterback, and it's exactly what happens when organizations prioritize process over people, data over instinct, and homework assignments over actual football knowledge. Paul DePodesta, who has been with the Browns for 10 years now, built out this massive data and analytics department that apparently has a strong voice in everything the organization does. And look, I'm not anti-analytics. Numbers have their place in modern football. But when your analytics department has more influence than your football people, when coaches are spending more time in meetings with statisticians than they are on the practice field, that's when you've lost the plot. The interview process that Cleveland is running is literally described as a preview of how the organization operates on a day-to-day basis. So if you're a coaching candidate and you're grinding through personality tests and essay questions and homework assignments just to get an interview, you better believe that's going to be your life if you actually get the job. Is it any wonder that some of the best coaching minds in football are taking one look at this situation and deciding they'd rather stay where they are or wait for a different opportunity? Jim Schwartz, the current defensive coordinator, is apparently one of the candidates, and the Browns want to keep him regardless of who gets the head coaching job. Then there's Todd Monken, who doesn't fit the typical profile Cleveland seems to be looking for, but he's a very intelligent guy who has run successful offenses in the NFL. These are the kinds of proven commodities that could actually help Shedeur Sanders develop into the quarterback everyone thought he could be when Cleveland drafted him. But if the Browns go with one of their analytics darlings instead, we could be looking at a situation where Shedeur becomes another talented quarterback whose career gets derailed by organizational dysfunction. Let's be real about something here. The Browns have been through this process multiple times now, and it hasn't exactly produced championship results, has it? They keep running the same play, using the same data-driven approach, making coaches jump through the same ridiculous hoops, and they keep getting the same mediocre results. At some point, you have to look in the mirror and ask yourself if maybe, just maybe, the process is the problem. Maybe you don't need coaches who are great at taking personality tests. Maybe you need coaches who are great at coaching football. The really disturbing part about all this is the message it sends to Shedeur Sanders and the rest of the roster. When your organization is more concerned with whether a coaching candidate can write a good essay than whether they can actually develop a game plan and motivate players, what does that tell you about their priorities? When they're willing to let the coaching search drag on for weeks and weeks while other teams are getting ahead, what does that say about their sense of urgency? And when multiple qualified candidates are pulling out of consideration because they don't want to deal with your process, what does that communicate about your reputation around the league? For Shedeur, this has to be incredibly frustrating. He did everything right. He had a great college career at Colorado. He handled the pressure of being a Sanders with grace and maturity. He came into the NFL ready to work and prove himself. And now he's sitting there watching the organization that drafted him turn what should be a straightforward hiring process into some kind of bizarre academic exercise that's taking forever and driving away quality candidates. The 2026 roster spot situation is particularly concerning because we're hearing whispers that if the wrong coach gets hired, there could be a philosophical clash about how to build the roster and who should be the quarterback of the future. Some of the candidates Cleveland is looking at have their own ideas about offensive systems and quarterback play, and not all of those ideas necessarily align with Shedeur's skill set. This is what happens when you don't have organizational alignment and a clear vision. Instead of finding a coach who can maximize the talents of the players you already have, you risk bringing in someone who wants to tear it all down and start over with their guys. And let's talk about the timeline for a second. If Cleveland ends up hiring Nathan Skillhouse and the Rams make it to the Super Bowl, we're looking at the Browns potentially not having a head coach until mid-February. That's insane. That puts them way behind every other team in terms of building their coaching staff, installing systems, planning for free agency, and preparing for the draft. Every day that goes by without a head coach is a day that Shedeur Sanders isn't getting coached, isn't learning a system, isn't building a relationship with the person who's supposed to be developing him into a franchise quarterback. The high-powered coaching agents around the league are apparently telling anyone who will listen that the Browns are the Browns. That's not a compliment, folks. That's industry shorthand for this organization does things in a way that nobody else does, and not in a good way. When your reputation around the league is that you're difficult to work with, that your process is unnecessarily complicated, and that you prioritize analytics over football instinct, you're going to have a hard time attracting top-tier talent. And that doesn't just apply to coaches. Players notice this stuff too. Think about what message this sends to future free agents who might consider signing with Cleveland. Think about what college players are thinking when they're watching this circus unfold, and Cleveland might be interested in drafting them. Nobody wants to be part of a dysfunctional organization, especially when there are 31 other teams in the league that do things in a more conventional football-focused way. The really sad part is that the Browns actually have some pieces to work with. Shedeur Sanders has shown he can play at this level. The rest of the rookie class, outside of Dillon Gabriel, has looked pretty solid. There's talent on this roster. But talent without proper coaching and organizational support is just wasted potential. We've seen it happen time and time again in the NFL. Talented players go to dysfunctional organizations, and their careers never reach the heights they should have because the infrastructure around them is broken. So what happens next? Well, if the latest reports are accurate, Cleveland is very intrigued by both Udinski and Skillhouse because they fit the profile of what the analytics department is looking for. If neither of those guys works out, the default option would apparently be Jim Schwartz, and then they'd have to figure out who to pair with him as an offensive coordinator. But here's the problem with that scenario. Who wants to take an offensive coordinator job in Cleveland right now? Who wants to be the person responsible for developing Shedeur Sanders in an organization that's this chaotic and unstable? The clock is ticking, and every day that goes by without a resolution to this coaching search is another day of uncertainty for Shedeur Sanders and his future with the franchise. The disturbing information coming out of Cleveland isn't just about essays and homework assignments. It's about an organization that seems fundamentally confused about what it takes to win in the NFL. It's about a front office that has prioritized process over results for so long that they can't see the forest for the trees anymore. What makes this situation even more infuriating is that it was completely avoidable. There was no reason for this coaching search to drag on this long. There was no reason to implement such a complicated, time-consuming interview process that drives away qualified candidates. There was no reason to leave Shedeur Sanders and the rest of the roster hanging in limbo for weeks on end. But this is Cleveland, and as the agents say, the Browns are the Browns. The football world is watching this unfold with a mixture of amusement and horror. Amusement because honestly, you can't make this stuff up. The idea of making NFL coaching candidates write essays is so absurd that it sounds like a sketch from a comedy show. But there's horror too, because real careers are being affected by this dysfunction. Shedeur Sanders' development as a quarterback is being compromised. The team's ability to compete in 2026 is being damaged with every passing day. And the Browns' reputation around the league, which wasn't great to begin with, is taking hit after hit. Here's the bottom line. And this is what Browns fans need to understand. Your organization is playing a different game than the rest of the NFL, and they're losing at it. While other teams are hiring coaches, building staffs, and preparing for the future, Cleveland is making people take personality tests and write essays. While other teams are developing their young quarterbacks and putting them in positions to succeed, Cleveland is creating uncertainty and instability around Shedeur Sanders. While other organizations are becoming destinations that players and coaches want to be part of, Cleveland is becoming a cautionary tale, a place that talented people actively avoid. The most disturbing part of all this isn't the essays or the homework or even the length of the search. It's the fundamental disconnect between what the Browns think makes a good coach and what actually makes a good coach. They're looking for tall, thin Ivy League guys who test well and fit their data models. But championships aren't won by people who look good on paper. They're won by leaders who can inspire players, make tough decisions in real time, adapt to changing circumstances, and get the most out of their talent. None of that can be measured by a personality test or an essay question. Shedeur Sanders deserves better than this. He deserves an organization that has a clear vision for his development. He deserves a coaching staff that's focused on maximizing his potential rather than whatever statistical models the analytics department has cooked up. He deserves stability and support and a real chance to become the quarterback that everyone saw flashes of during his rookie season. But right now, he's not getting any of that. Instead, he's getting the Browns being the Browns, and that's a damn shame. So what can we expect moving forward? Well, at some point, Cleveland will eventually hire someone. They have to. The question is whether it will be the right someone, whether it will be someone who can actually develop Shedeur Sanders and build a winning culture, or whether it will just be another name on the long list of coaches who have come through Cleveland and failed because the organizational structure around them was broken from the start. The disturbing information about Shedeur's roster spot for 2026 isn't just speculation or rumor. It's a very real concern based on how this organization operates and the uncertainty they've created around the most important position in football. If they hire the wrong coach, if that coach brings in his own system and his own ideas about who should be playing quarterback, Shedeur could find himself on the outside, looking in faster than you can say dysfunctional organization. This whole situation is a perfect encapsulation of everything that's wrong with overthinking football. The Browns have convinced themselves that they're smarter than everyone else, that their data-driven approach and their elaborate interview process will lead them to some hidden gem of a coach that other teams overlooked. But the reality is that they're just making things harder than they need to be, driving away quality candidates and creating chaos where there should be clarity. The NFL is a copycat league. When something works, other teams try to replicate it. But you notice nobody else is copying Cleveland's approach? Nobody else is making coaches write essays or complete homework assignments? There's a reason for that. It's because this approach doesn't work. It hasn't worked in Cleveland, and it's not going to magically start working now, just because they're applying it to a new coaching search.